Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party Network. Every 2 weeks we look at two films from the A24 filmography, and in between we bring you interviews with the talent involved. This week we're looking at Paul Schrader's First Reformed and the adaptation of Neil Gaiman's book How to Talk to Girls at Parties. Joining me as ever is Dallas King.
Hello, how you doing?
And this week we're also joined by the founder of the Nerd Party, Tristan Riddell. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, guys, for having me. I'm really excited to talk about half of these movies.
Don't give the game away.
So Tristan, we pose this question to every guest that we get on here. What is your opinion on A24 and what are the highlights of their filmography for you? I'm also kind of curious to hear your opinion as someone involved in marketing. What's your take on A24's marketing brand?
I have always been really impressed with A24's ability to stand apart. The movies that they distribute and the movies that they choose to distribute, and I think honestly you can tell an A24 film. You can't really say it's because they all look a certain way or they all sound a certain way or they all have the same kind of color palette, because there really is so much variety. But they have, it's so strange though. Like it's. The uniqueness is their most common factor, I think, which is an odd thing to say. But I mean, if you look at something like Enemy and next to Ex Machina, and then you juxtapose that next to Spring Breakers, and then Moonlight, and then Under the Skin, it's just it's crazy how different they all are. But when you see a trailer for an A24 film, whether it has the logo at the beginning or not, you're just kind of like, yeah, no, that makes sense, that tracks.
What are some of the highlights of the filmography for you? Anyone that maybe follows you on Letterboxd will definitely know High Life isn't one of them. What are some of your kind of favorite picks from their filmography?
Honestly, I'd have to say Ex Machina is really up there for me. I think Lady Bird is probably my absolute favorite out of all of them. I'd say I don't want to go too far into it because we're actually going to be talking about one of them today. But like Lady Bird and Ex Machina has to be my top two. Like those are definitely highlights. I know that probably a lot of people say Moonlight and Spring Breakers, but I think those two for me are really what drew me in. I mean, like you, Lee, tried to convince me to watch Lady Bird for a long time because the trailers just weren't really doing that much for me. But it was once I actually watched it, I was just like, holy crap, this is a great film with great performances.
People won't know that I actually shared a pizza with you before I went off to see Lady Bird. So, you will always be kind of involved in my first viewing of Lady Bird, that experience.
I had forgotten that. I had completely forgotten that was the movie. I love that you are, like, even when you're on vacation, you're like, let's go see a movie. Let's go to the theater. And that's just funny to me because I don't think I've ever seen a movie on vacation before.
You're one of those kind of people, Dallas. You like to see a film on holiday, don't you?
Yeah, I think the last time I was in New York, I think we went to see Vox Lux because we had a couple of hours spare, and I'd done something that Lucy had wanted to do, so I said, hey, let's watch a movie, and we ended up watching Vox Lux, which was quite a shock to the system, I have to say.
Now, Lee, didn't you refuse to watch 8th Grade, even though you had access to it in the States, but only via television?
Yeah, I like to strictly see it, kind of these sorts of films that are like the ones I'm really looking forward to in kind of cinemas first. So it's things like, you say Parasite, for example, that will be out on like digital in America in a week's time. Mm-hmm. But I've already seen it in the cinema, but I would not make that my first way of viewing something like Parasite. I would wait the extra month and a half to kind of catch it in the cinema. Fortunately, something like 8th Grade had a huge kind of gap between its US release and UK release, to even the point where it was at one point a 99 cents film of the week on iTunes. But it's always worth it to kind of catch things in the cinema and maybe digitally second.
I admire your dedication during that.
But before we dive into our films, we'll cover our A24 Hour news. So Tristan's had to pop out, so it's just me and Dallas in the newsroom for this one. So I'm a bit ambivalent when it comes to awards chat, and we're recording this a week and a half before the episode gets dropped. So I'm not going to date this discussion with award chat, and that's a whole other story that we'll maybe kind of discuss once the awards season
you don't want
comes
to show how Nostradamus you are and predict what's going to get nominated at the Oscars. I'll take a stab.
Yeah,
Do you
go
want me to
for
take
it.
a stab at it? I
Yeah.
think The Farewell will get nominated for Best Picture. I think the tide is going towards that. I think Uncut Gems will miss out, but I think there's always a wild card in the acting categories. So I'm going to take a Howard Ratner style punt and say Adam Sandler gets nominated for Uncut Gems. And maybe, just maybe, The Lighthouse for cinematography, because it got nominated at the BAFTAs. There's a chance it might get nominated. And I think it's a deserving nomination for cinematography. But I think that's about, oh, and Best Original Screenplay for The Farewell. I think that's, unfortunately, I think that's all that A24 will get this year. But hey, I guess we'll find out when this drops if I'm right or not. What about yourself? Do you want to take a punt?
I think The Farewell will be nominated for Best Picture. I think it will be nominated for Best Original Screenplay. I think Aquafina will be nominated. I think Adam Sandler will be nominated. I think the soundtrack for Uncut Gems will get nominated. Yeah, that would be my bet at the moment. As I say, my outliner in October was that Waves would be the one really kind of making waves at the Oscars. So I think
Yeah,
it's kind of...
we both sort of thought that it was the most, on paper, the most sort of Academy-friendly one. But yeah, it turns out, that the ship has maybe sailed on that one. And a Lighthouse, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we would have betted on Willem Dafoe probably getting a nomination for Best Supporting Actor. I also think that's kind of sailing away. It's been a bit of a disappointment, but I think it'll certainly be an improvement probably on the Solitary kind of nomination for First Reformed last year. So yeah, we'll wait and see what happens. I'm sure we'll touch on it in our episode in 2 weeks' time and stuff when the Oscar nominations do come through. But we've kind of got our first potential film of 2020 to come to talk about from A24, and that's First Cow. So a loner and a cook who has travelled west. A loner and a cook has travelled west and joined a group of fur trappers in the Oregon Territory, though he only finds a connection with a Chinese immigrant. The men collaborate on a business, although its longevity is reliant upon the participation of a wealthy landowner's prized milking cow. So, Dallas, this trailer dropped just yesterday. What was your reaction to Kelly Reichardt's latest film?
It's something that looks, quite interesting, actually. I'm a fan of her work, and it's sort of certainly... I can see the appeal to it to A24. They've got sort of history with the likes of like Slow West and stuff like that about this sort of going into the west of America, the sort of new frontier, that kind of thing. So I think it's definitely an A24 pick, and they are starting to build up a great rapport with female filmmakers. I think sort of around about when we first started the project, I think there were probably maybe around about sort of 16-70% of female filmmakers, but I think that's going to start increasing. They're certainly seeing that that's where the tide is going, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. She's done great work in the past, and I think this is going to fit in really well for the A24 brand. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Kelly Reichardt's a director I've been a bit kind of lazy on and diving into her filmography, so I've kind of added a bunch of her films to the watch list, and as besides sort of, really enjoying the films of A24, I'm also a huge Star Trek fan, and one of my kind of favourite characters in Star Trek was the character of Odo, played by René Auberjonois. So he sadly passed away this year, which was a huge kind of disappointment, but this is going to be one of his last feature films. He previously starred in Certain Women, kind of Kelly Reichardt's previous film, so I'm really excited to see that one and maybe kind of have a chat about René kind of when we get to this episode. I think when we get to this movie, it will be about August time potentially if it does on track for a UK release for us to see. So yeah, it's exciting to see what our 2020 homework is going to be. It's shaping up to be kind of a bit of a, we have a bit of information on what A24 are going to be releasing in 2020, but this is our first kind of visual look, so I'm quite excited for that one.
Yeah, I know they've got a high barrier to jump given the quality of the 2019 releases in America, of course. In the UK it's completely different, but excited to see what they come out. There's a couple of sort of rumours of films at Sundance and whatever, but nothing yet. So I think it's going to be exciting to see what they've got coming out.
And Uncut Gems scored A24's biggest box office haul, pulling in £18 million since $18 million, sorry, since it opened on the Wednesday over the Christmas period. So in its opening weekend, breaking the 11 million previously held by Midsummer. So Dallas, was this Uncut Gems kind of opening weekend, was that a surprise to you, or was it always going to kind of pull in the dollars?
I think it is a surprise, given that the filmmakers, the Safdie brothers, are not huge names at all. Good Time was a great film, but I don't think it really did much at the box office. I think people have really sort of found it on streaming and that. Adam Sandler is clearly the draw, but given the C+ cinema score, which is a thing in America, I don't think we really got equivalent here apart from film Twitter, really. People maybe went in thinking it was going to be like a regular Netflix Adam Sandler comedy and then got something completely different, which is maybe why they marked it down. But people are still going to see it, and apparently it has now outgrossed Cats in the US. And I saw one critic sort of say, who would have taken a bet that Uncut Gems would have outgrossed Cats at the US box office? And then someone just replied with, I know a guy, and it's just a picture of Adam Sandler from Uncut Gems. So yeah, absolutely, long odds, but it's really doing the business. And I think it's on course to certainly be A24's highest grossing film in America, to overtake Lady Bird actually now. Obviously, worldwide, I don't think it will be, given that it's on Netflix everywhere else, but I think A24 have to be delighted with the response to it so far.
Yeah, I think things like Uncut Gems, it's obviously just going to, I suppose, by the time this episode releases, it'll be kind of closing in on a Netflix release here, and it'll be well into its cinematic run here. I think movies like Uncut Gems, I've got a couple friends that are going to be kind of catching the film at the cinema. They don't often see many films. I think films like Uncut Gems, it's exciting for adult audiences in a way that, how often is it that when you go to the cinema these days you see an 18 rated kind of BBFC kind of certificate or R-rated film? We're kind of underserved as kind of an audience. The cinemas are often dominated by the big superhero movies, the event films, and we're used to that 12A, maybe a 15 if we're lucky. So it's really good to get sort of proper adult entertainment, similar to maybe when we got kind of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Midsummer, and a few other films over the kind of years. It feels like, this is an event film for the grown-ups in a way that we can go along and catch a film like this and really come away with a bit of an experience. And I know for me, having caught it in October at the film festival as a surprise film, I've been encouraging every one of my friends, don't rely on just seeing it on Netflix, go experience it in the cinema. And I think it'll be one that's going to really reward audiences when it comes to here in the UK. And I think its buzz, the kind of cult appeal perhaps on Twitter, has overcome any sort of Cinema Plus score and everything like that. It seems like there's a real buzz about this film, and long may it continue for films like this to be served to an audience like us.
Absolutely. I mean, this episode is dropping on the 13th, so by this time I will have seen it for a second time in a cinema. I know that it's got a small limited release here in the UK, so it's basically bypassing the multiplexes due to the sort of whole Netflix thing, but it's going to be showing at independent cinemas. I'm going to my local one who did gangbusters with The Irishman, so I think it's going to be a similar thing where it's going to, I think it's in the smallest screen, but I'm expecting a pretty packed out screening, and I'm just almost going to sort of see audience reactions to how they react to this film and just feel the almost sweaty, palpable tension in the screen as, Howard Ratner digs an even deeper hole for himself. And I'm looking forward to it.
I know, it's an exciting time, I suppose, as you kind of touched on. A24 films are quite different when it comes to the UK. We're recording this on the 9th. On the 10th, we have Uncut Gems begins its cinematic rollout here. Then we have it on the 17th. We have Waves, that gets its rollout here in the UK. And then 2 weeks later, on the 31st, we have The Lighthouse. So for those who have been kind of frustrated by America kind of having dominance on these films and the discussion and debate and discourse on them, it seems like now is the time for UK audiences to kind of step up and check these films out as well, give them a good kind of foreign box office too.
Absolutely, and like I've said it before, Lighthouse is going to play gangbusters in Aberdeen and any coastal town that is plagued by seagulls. So I'm looking forward to hearing the reactions on that. But it's a great month for us in the UK. But after that, I feel like we might have a bit of a wait before we get the next one. I want something now. I need my A24 fix.
So next week, on the eve of the Lighthouse's UK release, we have an interview with Valeriia Karaman to discuss her role as the mermaid in the Lighthouse. So here's a small preview of that interview. So between the audition and the start of the film, how much time was spent preparing and developing the look for your character?
So as I remember, I was in Milan and my agency, they called me and they asked me if I can go to Paris right now. Like, they were like, you have your flight in a couple of hours. And I'm like, oh, so we need to go to the airport right now. They were like, yes, you need to go to Paris. And then you're gonna meet guys from Canada who are doing prosthetics from prosthetic studio. And so I met those guys in Paris and they measured me, they put some stuff on me. It was like clay. Yeah, they put a clay on me to get a shape of my body, to be able to do the tail, which was made of silicone. The weight of this tail was around 30 kilos, I think. And also, and also these guys, they were telling me about they're gonna do some gills for me, and I gonna look, and I'm not, and they told me that it's not a story about Pretty Little Mermaid. I'm not gonna be anything like Pretty Little Mermaid from Disney. It's gonna be more like an evil mermaid and like scary, creepy, and blah blah blah. And I was like, yes, that is kind of style I like, which is cool. And yeah, this is how it was. And then I had another fitting for like my tail in let me think, it was somewhere in Canada, but it was not in Halifax. We were filming in Halifax and Yarmouth, and before this I was I'm traveling so much that I don't even remember where was the fitting, but it was in Canada before the movie started, like before the filming process started. And yes, and I was at their studio, and it took us a couple more days to make it perfect, to finish everything completely. And after this couple of days, all the team, like me and the guys who are doing prosthetics, all of us, we went together to Yarmouth.
So Dallas, we didn't have Patterson, we didn't have Willem Dafoe, but we've got the third kind of lead actress in The Lighthouse to come on to our podcast. So it was such a pleasure to get her onto the show and hear kind of behind the scenes insight into The Lighthouse. So look out for that full interview next week. So Dallas, what did you make of the mermaid in The Lighthouse?
I thought she was a really sort of intriguing, she makes an incredible sort of impression with very sort of limited screen time. And, I just slightly disappointed you didn't ask steak or fish, but next time.
So let's dive into our first film of the day, First Reformed, which has been rated as the #1 film of the past decade by one Paul Schrader. So for those not familiar...
He's got game.
Exactly. If you're not going to vote for yourself, who is? So, for those not familiar with First Reformed, it's all about Reverend Ernst Toller, played by Ethan Hawke, who is a solitary, middle-aged parish pastor at a small Dutch Reformed church in upstate New York, on the cusp of celebrating its 250th anniversary. Once a stop on the Underground Railroad, the church is now a tourist attraction catering to a dwindling congregation, eclipsed by its nearby parent church, Abundant Life, with its state-of-the-art facilities and 5,000-strong flock. When a pregnant parisher asks Reverend Toller to console her husband, a radical environmentalist, the clergyman finds himself plunged into his own tormented past and equally despairing future, until he finds redemption in an act of grandiose violence. So, written and directed by Paul Schrader, this film was nominated for Best Original Screenplay at the Academy Awards. But before we dive into our thoughts on the film, we're going to have 2 extracts from an upcoming interviews with First Reformed cast members to take us behind the scenes. In this first one, we hear from Elanna White, who plays one of the choir members of Abundant Life, and was part of the soundtrack to the unforgettable trailer for First Reformed.
Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
So when did you sort of first hear about First Reformed? When did it come to your attention?
So First Reformed was a really funny story, actually, because I did not actually audition for the movie. I had not heard about it before I got a phone call from my agents. I actually had just signed with them in April or May of that year. Like maybe a month, 2 months later, I booked Bully. And it was just like one of my first or second auditions with them. So I really felt like I paid my dues for a while, and, you know, I wasn't really banking on anything exciting happening. And then in about January, I get this phone call from my agents, and I'm like, hey, how are you? And they're like, we're great, you know, we're great because we're looking at a booking for you. And I was kind of like, I haven't gone on any auditions lately. Like, I don't know what you could be talking about. And they tell me that the casting director booked me off of videos that I had of me singing online, and they wanted me to come in to shoot this movie, First Reformed. And I was, of course, like, oh my God, yeah. I didn't know what it was. They basically summed it up that it was an indie film that Paul Schrader, who is an absolute legend, of course, was directing, and that Ethan Hawke and Amanda Seyfried were in. But I really didn't know any sort of plot or any sort of information about the film until after I was given that offer. And then, of course, I looked it up, and I was like, oh my gosh, this looks so amazing. I would absolutely love to be a part of this. And then that was when they assigned us that hymn that we sing in the movie, which, you know, context clues would lead me that, okay, it's very church-centric, and, you know, we're singing very classical church hymns, which, yeah, so that was kind of my introduction to it, which is a pretty awesome introduction. I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I got that phone call.
I was wondering that when I was kind of watching it and thinking about your role. I was wondering, were they like a group of kind of choir singers? Did you kind of do things together? You know, and then it seems like they've kind of brought you all in together individually. What was that like to kind of then prepare as a group for singing these songs, to making sure that you are all in the right kind of tone and making sure that you're the right fit together?
Yeah, it was a really crazy experience, honestly. I think that it was such an amazing group of professional singers that we were able to do it in this way. But basically, they sent us this hymn, Blood of the Lamb, that you can both hear in the movie, and also they ended up using it for the trailers, which blew my mind. We didn't know how many people were going to be singing with us, because, you know, a choir can be anywhere between the five of us, really, which is what was in the movie. And when I was growing up, I was in choirs of like 30 or 40 kids. So they gave us the hymn, and they were basically like, hey guys, here's the hymn that you're singing. Here's a little recording of it. Pick a harmony. Like, just reply to this email with whatever harmony you want. And I really wasn't picky, but the other girl who was singing with us chose the high harmony before I got there. So I was like, okay, cool. I guess I'm going to be singing the low harmony now, which is, you know, totally fine with me. And I learned the low harmony on our own time. We didn't meet up before we shot the film, which is really a testament to how talented all of the other singers were. And we basically got there at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and we rehearsed it a few times together in the church, without literally ever singing the song ever before. And it worked, and everybody learned their harmonies. And then the recording that you hear both in the film and on the trailer were shot and recorded in the church live, which I thought was really cool, because that's literally a recording of 5 people singing a song who had never met before that day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a really cool process. So it was very, very interesting, because I have a good amount of experience singing with the different either musical theater composers around the city or, you know, bands around the city. So it's always interesting to see how different people will do it. but that's how it happened with First Reformed, which was really cool.
What was that kind of first day like on set? Like when you're getting into the costume, you have this frankly amazing sort of abundant life polo t-shirt,
Yes.
the chinos, like the look is absolutely nailed there. What was it like sort of getting into the costume and then knowing that you've kind of got this performance to do in front of Ethan Hawke, some of the other cast members, Paul Schrader, in this sort of large kind of empty mega church, really?
Yeah, it was honestly amazing. I was so starstruck. I really, like, between shooting First Reformed and all my other projects, it's always hilarious to me just how starstruck I am those first few hours I'm on set, because I can't believe that I get to do this. But yeah, so like I said, we got there really around 5 o'clock in the morning, which is always a really fun experience because, you know, when you live in the city and you're a local hire, you're getting yourself to a checkpoint to then get transportation to the place. Or you're potentially getting yourself to the place. But this particular church we shot at in the middle of Jamaica, Queens, which is really cool for me because I'm from Queens, so I was really excited I got to shoot in Queens. But we literally get this email, you know, day beforehand, like, hey, be at this unnamed street corner at 3:30 in the morning in Manhattan, and, you know, an unsaved number is going to text you and you're going to get into the van, and, you know, the van's going to take you to the middle of Queens, which is such a funny way to put it because it's just like, that's acting for you. It's totally legit, but it's just such a weird thing. And so you get to the place and it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and at this point, for me personally, I know better than to do hair and makeup before I get there because I know they're going to put us in hair and makeup. And we got into hair and makeup immediately. We also weren't sure about what context we were singing the song in before we got to set. Like, I didn't know whether or not it was, you know, the Abundant Life resident youth choir or what it was going to be. But we get herded to the makeup trailer, and I will never forget the moment. I'm sitting in the makeup chair, and this man walks in the door, and he's pretty unassuming, and he has this cape on and this big black wide brim hat, and I didn't really think anything of it because I'm just, you know, doing the makeup. And everybody's like, oh, Ethan's here. Oh, good morning, Ethan. Oh, morning, Ethan. How are you? And Ethan is like, hey, how are you guys? Hey. And then I look up and I can see him through the mirror, and he's behind me, and it's Ethan Hawke. And I was like, oh, that's the Ethan you're talking about. Like, wow. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know why I didn't put two and two together. But the most interesting part, I think, about the costuming and the hair and makeup was the movie very deliberately had a complete lack of color. And I had this strip of, like, bluish green in the back of my hair that was so temporary, but it was growing out, and you could see just ever so slightly the smallest amount of blue-green, and the makeup artist actually had to hide it behind my ponytail because she was like, we can't have any color in this film. Even though you're playing kids, the palette is very specific, which I thought was fascinating to me. It was really, really cool to hear. So, you know, makeup was pretty simple. They let me wear my actual real glasses in the film, which is always a treat. Those purple glasses have become very iconic to my life. But yeah, the Abundant Life Church polos, my goodness, do I wish I could have kept one. I wish they have them as souvenirs. They were so epic. So yeah, we basically had our own shoes, but they had the Abundant Life polos, and then they had, I really truly think they were children's boy size Gap chino pants. They were amazing. They were like everything that you would never want to wear, but that's why they were so amazing. and yeah, and it was a really cool experience to just get there and them kind of hand them out and be like, so here's your wardrobe for today. It was very, very, very cool.
The one thing that stood out for me with the performance is, yeah, you guys sing a hell of a hymn, but there's this little moment that I just would love to know what kind of is going on. So there's the moment when you're performing in front of the, Ethan Hawke's character and this the kind of the I can't remember exact role within the church, but you're doing your performance, and one of the guys behind pinches the taller girl, the one that managed to get the higher part of the hymn, and she has a sort of, there's a little giggle, there's a little bit of tomfoolery there, and you have this eye roll of like, there's so much you can look at going, I wonder what's going on there. Is this like an eye roll of like, you sexist pig, or like, oh, it's you guys again? And it's just this little moment you think, that didn't almost need to be in there. It could have just been this choir. But there's this element of kind of character that Schrader's built in somehow into this sort of dynamic with this youth choir. What was the kind of direction behind that moment, and what was it like to throw your ultimate kind of shade at the direction of these two other choir members?
Yeah, that was a really fun moment. So one of the things that I love about being on set and about acting, particularly on camera and being on set, I mean, I love being in a rehearsal room as well because it's very similar, but you get on set and you have a script, or sometimes you don't. We didn't have a script, we didn't have the text on a page, we just had the song we were singing and we knew it would be worked in one way or another, but basically when we were standing there in the church, we're kids in a youth choir. And I think one thing that the movie does so beautifully is there are these flecks of irony throughout it, which is so interesting to me because it is at its core, it's a very heavy film. But, the direction was given. He was like, well, we should have you guys do something that's a little bit greater than just standing there and singing. So we got the direction that the two of them were going to have that little, like, hair pull or back twill or whatever it was going to be, and that we should have some sort of general reaction to it. And I mean, honestly, my impulse was just to go with a very classic, like, I can't believe you guys are doing this again. Like, that very much by the books, kind of nerdy, she's just there to sing, and he really liked it and they went with it, which was really, really cool to see. So it was basically kind of, the direction was just, general reaction, nothing too distracting and nothing too bombastic, of course. But he was very good at keeping it natural and just kind of encouraging us to live in these characters. And I was very delighted my shade could be immortalized. It was very cool.
What is Paul Schrader like as a director to act and perform in front of? That you have this one, he's one of the kind of classic kind of Hollywood directors, he's done so many amazing and incredible films, and First Reformed is obviously one of them. What's he like as a director, and what kind of working underneath him makes him so special?
He was so lovely to work with. I was shocked, honestly, at how hands-on he was. I mean, I've done projects. I did a commercial spot a few years back, and the directors weren't even on set with us. They were giving direction to an assistant director through a walkie, and they were in an office somewhere. So I've kind of run the gamut of set life and seeing the way that different people do things. And I mean, easily Paul Schrader could be one of those very classic directors who, has an AD filter everything to the actors and, has the different crew members doing things for him. But he wasn't like that at all. He was on set with us. He learned everyone's names. He was, moving around with us. He was very deliberate with his vision. It felt like you were working with somebody who really knew what he wanted, and he knows how to talk to actors, and he knew how to ask for it. And it was a really amazing experience being there and being under such iconic figures, and watching him interact with Ethan, and, you know, watching Ethan take in our performance, and just watching these people interact with each other was really, really, really cool. It was a very, very life-changing, eye-opening experience.
What was the kind of feedback you were getting from like Ethan and Paul on your performance?
So, I mean, both Ethan and Paul were delightful. Ethan was so complimentary. He also sat there for, I believe, if I remember correctly, every single take of ours, even the ones that he wasn't in the background for, and he really didn't have to do that. I've worked with big names where they just sat in their trailer until they were called on set. They were nice enough, but we had no interaction at all. Ethan was there in the back of that church watching us sing every single tape, which was just so cool, and it felt so amazing that if somebody like Ethan Hawke could sit there and take in your performance and respect you as an artist. And after every single take, he was like, "You guys sound awesome. It's really, really lovely to watch you guys." And the same with Paul. Paul was very complimentary and just seemed really happy with the outcome. And, you know, it was a lot of trust. It's like, we trust you guys to blindly learn the song and to come in and to do your work, and, you know, we trusted them to give us a very safe, secure working environment, and it really was. It was everything that you could possibly want it to be.
That, as someone that loves the Before trilogy, knowing that Ethan Hawke is one of the good guys is music to my ears. That's a huge takeaway for me.
Yes, yeah. He really was. And I mean, not even in one of those ways where, you know, he wasn't even standoffish. He was so participatory. It was very, very, very cool to see, because you really never know which way it's going to go. And yeah, he really was one of the good guys.
What did you think about the song choice itself? I mean, the themes of the song really tie in incredibly well to the film, and then for it to be part of the marketing campaign, I mean, I just as you kind of mentioned, obviously, the trailer, I just had a quick look at it there, and it's like, that's a trailer where your singing, your voice has been viewed like 5.7 million times as a trailer. You are soundtracking that piece of art, and people love to watch these kind of A24 trailers. What's it like to know that, you know, this job that you've kind of done for like a day, you know, you've gone in, performed this song amazingly well, has then gone on to be part of a big marketing campaign, and that you are heard and watched on people's phones, people's earphones, you know, being a real part of what maybe got people to go see this film in the first place?
Yeah, that was probably the most amazing part of this whole experience. My mind was absolutely, completely, and utterly blown. I had no idea that they were going to be using that song for the trailer until the trailers came out. And I just, you know, I keep track of the projects that I do, and I basically went on their Instagram one day to watch the trailer, and I was like, oh my gosh, they used our song in the trailer, which was so cool. Yeah, I mean, the song selection was so interesting because I also didn't know that there was another choir number in the movie, and the song that they sing during that number, I believe at the funeral, is actually a contemporary song that's a choir arrangement of it. So it's a very different vibe to go between the contemporary classic feeling adaptation and a very heavy hymn like Blood of the Lamb. I mean, it's called Blood of the Lamb, you know, which I think conveys the theme so well. And I think the vibe matches that trailer so well in ways that I could never have imagined. And yeah, I mean, I was really just starstruck. I, of course, sent it to all of my family and my close friends, and they were all like, "We can hear you so clear." And I was just like, I know, that's crazy, you know, because there are two female parts. There's a high part and the low part, and that low part, like, I sang. That's crazy. But yeah, they also were gracious enough to give us a soundtrack credit on IMDb for the film as well. So yeah, and then, the Oscar nomination, and all of a sudden my voice is not only in an Oscar nominated film, but in the trailer and on the soundtrack of an Oscar nominated film, which is still to this day, I truly can't believe that I can say that out loud. It was a really amazing experience.
When did you go from you've seen the trailer to when's the first time that you get to sit down and watch the film and see your performance?
So I think it couldn't have been too long in between, and I'm pretty sure I had a run at the New York Film Festival at Lincoln Center a few months before it actually came out for a commercial run, and I missed it during that run. And I didn't even know that it ran for the New York Film Festival, and I had a friend who went to go see it, and my friend messaged me on Instagram and was like, I just saw you performing on screen at Lincoln Center. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm at home in my pajamas. And it turned out the movie released there, so that was really incredible to know that people saw it beforehand. I ended up going to see it just downtown at a little indie movie house. It was probably a few months in between the trailer. I didn't really realize the reception, and I didn't really realize the implications behind it until I saw it. And I saw the trailers, I saw kind of everything that was coming before it, because, even with big names behind a movie, when I shot it, it really kind of, it felt like, and it was more billed as, an indie through and through. It didn't really feel like it was going to be this very iconic, movie critic's dream. It didn't feel like it was even trying to be an Oscar contender. And we just, my boyfriend and I went to a little indie movie house in Manhattan, and we sat there and we watched the movie that I was in the theater with other people, and it was a very funny experience. It was very cool to watch. And then later on, it was put on Amazon Prime, which I don't know if it's still on Amazon Prime, but we got to watch it again on Amazon Prime, so it was very cool.
What's it like when you see your scene within like the context of this entire film, a film that has generated a lot of debate, discussion, it can polarize people in some ways. What's it like when you see what part you play within this kind of greater whole?
I think, honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better role in this particular film. I think one of the things, going back to something I said a little bit earlier, one of the things that I find so quirky and fun about that scene is it really kind of is this moment of levity in this very, very, very serious landscape. The film absolutely is controversial, but it's very clearly meant to be controversial, and it's meant to kind of mess around with your head and your perception of things, and mess around with the characters' heads and the characters' perception of things. And I think that moment in the church, which is really towards the beginning of the film, is this moment of simplicity in the whole movie. And I think it's this moment of levity. And I think that it's a moment where maybe Ethan Hawke's character is experiencing, like, the only part of peace and joy that he experiences in the entire film, where he really is just simply, waiting for this woman to be done with her choir lesson. But they didn't need to keep the whole song in the movie, which is another thing that blew my mind, because you go and you record something like that, but there are so many things in movies and TV that get cut out in the final product, So when I saw it and I saw that they kept the whole song in the movie, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is truly crazy. They did not have to keep this whole song. And I think that it really is this moment of kind of, there are moments of light in the darkness. And I think I couldn't have asked for a better role, because I never like to take things too seriously, just, as a rule in life. And, to play these kind of like quirky ne'er-do-well, like scrappy choir student, I think is really a fun addition to a movie that's very largely serious.
What kind of impact does being involved in a film like First Reformed have on your career when you can put that onto your CV, your IMDb? Oh, I'm the star of a Oscar-nominated kind of film. Does it have much of an impact?
Yeah, well, I get asked to do really cool podcasts sometimes, which is really exciting. When you contacted me to do this, I was amazed, because the movie's been out for a good chunk of time, but I think a movie like that does have such lasting impact on a career, and it wasn't something that I was banking on when I shot it. Like I said, it was just this job that my agents got me that I didn't even audition for. It seemed, of course, it was an amazing opportunity, but I didn't really expect it to blow up the way it did. And then it did, and it really, truly, it's something I'm so proud of, and it's something that, it's just perpetually cool to me, honestly. It's another one of those things that I'm starstruck to say it. And when the Oscar nomination came out, and, the reception came out, and even the controversy, there are so many films that come out that don't really leave a lasting impression at all, and hearing people talk about what their takeaway was from it, and the parts that stuck with them, and the art style, it really was like, oh my gosh, like, wow, what a cool thing to be involved in.
Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
So thanks very much to Elanna for joining us, and you'll get the full interview in a few months' time. So Tristan, when did you first watch First Reformed, and what was your expectations going in and your initial reaction?
Well, I wasn't as hardcore as you. I saw it digitally first. I saw it in when it was, as soon as it was released on iTunes. I went and rented it. It was going into it. Growing up, Ethan Hawke was my absolute favorite actor. I was obsessed with his movies and his works. To this day, his novel, The Hot Estate, is one of my favorite novels of all time. Like, no, I'm not joking. Like, there's no hyperbole there. It's truly a beautiful novel. Horrible movie, but a beautiful novel. And I always love his voice, like literally and figuratively. Like, I love how he narrates films. It feels like I feel like there's so many Hollywood execs in there, and also like independent executives in there who are just like, okay, so this screenplay calls for narration. Who do you want? And they're like, well, obviously we're going to get Ethan Hawke. And I feel like that's definitely a niche that he's built himself into. And for that, I was super, super excited. And I was interested in how they were going to tackle not only religion, but God and Jesus in cinema. And I was interested, this might sound like I'm sounding like Mike Schindler, who else is on the network, but I was interested in the aspect ratio and how they were going to utilize that aspect ratio. And so there wasn't, I didn't have too many high hopes, except, it's getting some buzz, and I love Ethan Hawke, and that's pretty much it. That's all I was thinking about when I clicked pay and rent on iTunes.
So then when you watched that film for the first time, what was your it's finished, what were you kind of thinking?
Well, as I was watching it, I was thinking, holy crap, this is a beautiful film. Like, this has amazing cinematography. I feel like Schrader is a veteran who knew what the rules of filmmaking were and broke them many times on purpose and in a delectable way. And I was impressed with the kind of the inky blacks, the contrast, and just the color palette. It just so much of it, like the deeply shot master plates from the cinematography. It's so much of it. And I haven't even talked about the script yet. The script was just mind blowing. I caught myself, like, my wife was watching it with me at the time, and she every once in a while I'd go, huh, like I would just out loud say, Like I would nod approvingly when I'd hear an amazing quote. And I love a good quote. Like I have a journal myself, like written with just fantastic quotes that I've heard or that I've read, and I put down on paper. And all throughout, I was doing that. And the problem with the reason why I'm giving you this long answer about while I was watching it, because at the end, once it was done, I had a very, very different reaction at the end than I did while I was watching it. And it wasn't so much, and Lee, you know what I'm going to say, but it wasn't so much the ending itself. It was that frickin' levitation scene.
Well, it's safe to say we're going to touch on many of these points in our discussion on First Reformed today. So, Dallas, what was your first experience with First Reformed, and what was your expectations going in and your initial reaction?
Well, I think I saw this one at the cinema, and I think this was the film where I really started to take notice of A24, because weirdly enough, on the next episode, I think we're talking about Hereditary, but Hereditary actually came out first in the UK in May, and then this one came out in July. And yeah, I mean, Ethan Hawke is also one of my sort of favourite actors. I think he's great at sort of delivering sort of gravitas and a very sort of naturalistic approach, even to sort of genre films such as like Sinister or Predestination. So I was very excited to see what he was going to do here, and he just blew me away, I thought. And I didn't know really too much about it. I was expecting, like, you know, there's a priest sort of going through an existential crisis, but I wasn't really expecting it to be as Taxi Driver-esque as it turned out to be. It was, I mean, I think even Paul Schrader has sort of said he didn't really notice how much of a Taxi Driver, so almost sort of remake in some respects, he made until he got into the editing room. But I mean, you've got like the voiceover, the sort of keeping the diary, the sort of quest to save a young girl and stuff like that. So I was really drawn in by that, because Taxi Driver is just a fantastic film, one of my favourite films. So really keen to see that. And yes, I think towards the end there are certain sequences that will divide audiences, and I think I've seen some people say that it lost them at certain points, but I think I managed to go with it, and yeah, I was shocked and pleasantly surprised by the ending. And I think watching it back this week, I think this is a film which has actually become even more sort of relevant and even greater given the sort of whole climate change thing that we're experiencing at the moment as well, I think.
Yeah, I was the same as you, Dallas. I caught this one in the cinema, and I kind of had high expectations because I love Ethan Hawke. I'd heard good buzz for the film, but I didn't really know what the story was going to be. And I remembered I think I really underestimated the kind of the scope of the film. I thought it would be very much there's Ethan Hawke. He's kind of a poor kind of white guy that's going through his problems as a kind of pastor and so on, and we're going to kind of follow that journey kind of through him and, you know, the church, and maybe losing his faith and so on, things that we've maybe kind of seen a few times before. But the kind of climate change aspect really caught me kind of off guard, and just how kind of unforgettable the film was, that I kind of left it and was still thinking about it and became really desperate to see it again. And I'm really excited we've now got to this stage of the filmography where we can kind of really dive into it. I know for you, Tristan, this is a film we've wanted to kind of get you on from. As soon as we kind of conceived this podcast, we thought we've got to get you onto it. You know, for us, I suppose this is it'll be interesting to hear your take on it. For example, when Schrader kind of spoke about this film, he's a man of faith and swore that he would never make a film about religion until, you know, he felt the pull of this on sort of the eve of his 70th birthday. Me and Dallas, we are not people much of faith, especially, you know, but you've kind of touched on it a few times on sort of Nerd Nuptial. How did you meet this film, and what did it kind of say to you about faith in a way that it might not apply to people like me and Dallas that are watching it and maybe getting something else from it?
Well, yeah, as you said, I am a man of faith. I'm a believer, and I honestly love when religion and faith is depicted in film, and whether it's shown in a positive light or a negative light, I really find it interesting. And I believe that I'm one of those guys who, you know, like when you make a film about Jesus, like Jesus's life, I want it to be an interpretation. I want you as a filmmaker or as a screenwriter or as a producer, director, or anything like that, to show how you see Jesus or a criticism of Jesus or how much you love Jesus on film, I love seeing that because I feel like Jesus is the type of deity that belongs to everybody, and there is no one, version that we know of today. And so I'm very open. I say all that just to say that I'm very open when I go. And I was actually quite surprised. Like I could tell that this film was made by the hands of people who were believers, at least in part, at least some of them. And I felt like it was an extremely respectful view of not only religion and faith, but God, and particularly Jesus, because I feel like in modern cinema, it's not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to talk about Jesus. You're not allowed to talk about the Son. You're really only allowed to talk about the Father because there's more universal appeal with the Father. If you just say God, then anybody can imprint whatever they want, whether you're Muslim or Jewish or Christian or whatever else you might be. You could just say God, and then people can transplant their own ideas onto it. But when you talk about Jesus, you get much more finite. And so a lot of, when you're making a film, you want mass appeal because you want to sell, butts and seats. But so that's why people shy away from it. But with this one, I felt like it was very respectful while at the same time being critical and talking about mega churches taking over and talking about how an old country church kind of falls to the wayside and just becomes a tourist attraction. It shows the old faith and the new faith, and the new way of things and the old way of doing things. It's kind of like a much more serious The Righteous Gemstones on HBO, where you see all these smaller churches getting swallowed up by the new ones. And so I felt like there's been oftentimes one thing that really resonated with me was the climate change aspect of it. I didn't expect it, but I was appreciative of it because there's kind of this divide in the Christian faith where people are like, oh, well, God gave us the earth, and so we can do with it as we please, and it doesn't matter because we're all going to end up in heaven anyway. So what does it matter if we trash this earth? I've heard that almost verbatim. It's disgusting. And then there's the other side of it where it's just like, no. We're stewards of this planet. This was a gift from the Almighty, and the animals and the plants and the climate itself. We are here to take care of it because it's one of God's creations, just like we are. And how can you call yourself a loving member of the Christian community, a loving person who loves God, when you trash your own planet, the planet that He gave you? And I really liked that struggle back and forth between big business when it comes to climate change and big business when it comes to faith. And I just thought it was very fascinating and well written and deftly handled.
What about for yourself, Dallas? When we think of maybe sort of Christianity, we don't maybe think of these mega churches. We don't really have them here in the UK. We probably think of sort of, Christianity, something that you would think of maybe with your grandparents.
The Vicar of Dibley.
Yeah, Vicar of Dibley. It doesn't really have the political kind of connotations it does in America. We don't really sort of have an evangelical kind of community here in the UK. It seems very different, and the type of discussions that we're watching unfold in First Reformed, you couldn't imagine it being done in sort of a UK version of the film. What was it like for you outside in kind of looking at this story and this debate kind of taking place between sort of the old and the new, and this American faith versus sort of maybe American business?
Yeah, no, I mean, what I certainly took from the story is that it's Ethan Hawke's character. Certainly, he's having a crisis of faith, but it's not probably in like his own belief, but in probably the system. Because, like you say, he does have this sort of disdain for these mega churches where they're now sort of doing live web streaming and stuff like this, and it's all about sort of passing around the collection box to make more money, and it is becoming a business. And that's why he almost seems to actually be happy at this sort of small town sort of church and stuff. So that's where his main struggle has. And also, of course, you've got the fact that these churches are now being funded by this company, which is potentially affecting climate change as well. And, I think there's that scene where he's talking to Cedric Keels, not Cedric the Entertainer, mind, Cedric Keels, because he's a professional actor now. And he's sort of saying, are we going to end up wiping out the earth? And then Cedric sort of says, well, God did it once before. Like, if that's his plan, that's his plan. And then he's very much, well, somebody has to do something. And it turns out that watching it again, I just finished watching it again like yesterday, and I realized that when he sort of says, well, somebody has to do something, that Reverend Toller was essentially Greta Thunberg before Greta Thunberg was Greta Thunberg about 2 years ago. He was saying we have to do something, and he was going to make a stand at the end, although we can talk about that in a bit before we get into sort of spoiler territory. But no, I mean, yeah, I'm not hugely aware of a thing, but certainly from watching other movies and sort of TV documentaries such as like Louis Theroux and stuff, sometimes has some great stuff on that. I was able to sort of follow it and stuff like that, but I could certainly see, probably due to the quality of Ethan Hawke's performance, I could certainly engage with his character and understand his struggles at the same time.
Did you kind of, Tristan, and I'll throw this to you, Dallas, did you kind of relate to the character of Toller, this kind of man fighting kind of this cause, or this disillusionment? Did you find any kind of relating? Did you find any that you related in any way to this character?
Not. I didn't really, because I've never really had this kind of level of crisis of faith or crisis of life. Like I've, knock on wood, I've had a very charmed life, and I've had my struggles with particular churches. I've had my struggle with the church in general, but never really in faith or in God. And I think I didn't really relate to him specifically, but I definitely related to the movie and to what it was trying to say, and the church itself, and like seeing those people in the churches when it comes to big business and big churches and smaller faiths and smaller churches. I've lived through that. I've lived through church divorces. I've lived through church splits. I've lived through churches being swallowed up by mega churches. I've seen it happen. I live in the North Shore of the Chicagoland area, and so mega churches are getting bigger and bigger and bigger here, and you're seeing much more connectivity. So I think that in itself is probably what I related to more than Ethan Hawke's character specifically.
What about for yourself, Dallas? Did you see anything of yourself in this character, or perhaps his environmentalist kind of friend?
Well, I mean, in the last couple of years, I've certainly, I'm not sure if it was because of this film, but because of Blue Planet, whatever, but certainly I've been taking a more active role in sort of my sort of thinking about the environment, so I've sort of cut down on single-use plastics. I've become 90% vegan. I have the odd off day, but cheese is very nice, and I love fish sometimes. So yeah, but for the most part, I have sort of reduced that sort of thing. So I am sort of conscious of doing all the recycling things. So I'm taking a more conscious role of what I can do to help the environment and stuff like that. So from that aspect, I could certainly relate to his struggle. When you see sort of people blithely doing nothing, or just sort of putting their head in the sand and claiming that there's nothing going on, you just have to really watch the news and sort of see that, yeah, the world is burning in certain places.
One thing I'm keen to get your guys' opinions on as sort of projectionists, and you've touched on it there as well, Tristan, is that Schrader's gone with the Academy ratio. It's quite a rare way of shooting, obviously, since kind of widescreen came along. We've seen it previously in American Honey. What did you make of the choice, kind of firstly, Dallas, as a projectionist, to go with the Academy ratio?
Given that most multiplexes these days don't have curtains or... basically, so therefore you can't bring in the masking, so therefore it just does look crap on certain screens where you just have big black bars. It's kind of distracting, but no, I did really like it. It sort of gave it a sort of more sort of claustrophobic, and you're sort of basically with him the entire time. It sort of helps sort of amplify that sort of nature along with the voiceover and the diary stuff. You're sort of in his head almost. So I thought it was really good, and the cinematography is fantastic. There's some wonderful sort of striking imagery in there. There's the scene where sort of Ethan Hawke's walking around against this sort of beautiful purple sky sort of at night, and then just at dawn as it comes up, and then that slow-mo shot of the Pepto-Bismol sort of mixing into the whiskey, which I've got one of these here right now. I'm going to drink it later, but no drain cleaner. So yeah, I really like the cinematography and the decision to shoot in that aspect ratio.
What about for yourself, Tristan?
I thought it was a very interesting choice. Whenever you see somebody come out with the Academy ratio or a 4:3 ratio or something that's a little bit more square than it is rectangle, it always fascinates me because you know that they didn't make that as an arbitrary decision. They were just like, they had a reason why. And I felt like, to kind of go off of what Dallas was saying about the claustrophobic feel, I feel like it focuses the eye, and it definitely brings in your perspective. And the beauty of the Academy ratio, as it's different from the 2.4 or even 16:9, is that you have to utilize depth more. You have to do it. You have to use the Z space within the frame, and that is exactly what they do. Like your eye goes through different depths. You look at the foreground, the middle ground, the background much more than you would have if it was shot in 16:9, because lots of filmmakers just take advantage of the wide space. But at the same time, Paul Schrader and his cinematographer, what they did was they used the Academy ratio, but at the same time would cut off the action on the sides. Like you would hear people speak, but they'd be off frame because they would just walk off frame. They like Ethan Hawke, I think, arrived at the house. He drove up, arrived at the house, and then walked off camera. But they didn't change the shot. They didn't edit it out. And he's still talking, and we can't see him. And it's if this was an amateur film, or if this was a freshman filmmaker, or if this was a student film, I'd mark him down. Like I'd mark down points saying, like, listen, you're not showing the action. Cut to an alternate angle. What are you doing? But because it's Paul Schrader, because he knows what he's doing, it makes you think about it much more from a filmmaker's perspective, where it's just like, okay, they're not showing us this. Why? And that in itself is a trick that involves you in the story a great deal more from a visual aspect.
One thing I think we'll kind of move towards sort of spoiler territory here now. One thing that's really split opinion is this magical mystery tour. What was your reaction as Toller and Mary get on top of each other and go through the cosmos, Dallas?
I mean, the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, this is not what I was expecting, and a very sort of bold decision, but I could appreciate it from a storytelling perspective. It's sort of like the two of them sort of forming this bond, and it sort of kind of helps cement Toller's decision in where his path is going to go from that point on. So yeah, it was unexpected, and initially I thought this is the wrong choice, but I think seeing it in the whole form with where it goes towards the end, I think it does work just. But it's interesting that actually I noticed watching the next film we're going to talk about also seems to have a sort of dreamlike sequence where the two of them go off into sort of a space type thing. So I find it odd that even though they're two completely different films, they actually have a slight common thread running through them.
What about for yourself, Tristan? You kind of touched on it. This was one that you maybe didn't go with earlier. Has time made the magical mystery tour more kind of palatable to you, or does it kind of remain a sticking point?
It remains a sticking point. I hated this scene. I was so on board with the movie. I was so absolutely on board. They had me. They did such a great job of crafting everything and putting it together meticulously. And I was enraptured by the film. I thought it was so good. And then we get to that friggin' scene, and I'm just like, oh, it's like if Paul Schrader was just like, all right, guys, I'm gonna go take a lunch, and then David Lynch just snuck in and said, I have an idea, and they didn't have time to properly light it, so they just threw up a green screen that he kept in his trunk, and they said like, no, it'll be good, and it took me out of it. I think that's the problem, is that they spent the entire movie crafting it in such a perfect way that just draws you in. The Academy ratio, the cinematography, the color palette, the performance, the screenplay, just the non-diegetic music for like the first 72 minutes. it draws you in, and then boom, you get this weird, fantastical, even poorly done, it's poorly executed on top of it, scene, and it ruined it for me, because as I'm watching it, they try to resume the build like nothing ever happened. And so now you have to expect the unexpected. So once we get to the ending, which I don't know if we can talk about it yet, but I'll cover it in broad strokes. Once you get to the ending, you're just kind of like, okay, well, that's weird. They should have kept the fantastical into a one shot, not into a double dose. And I think that's what really, really pissed me off.
Now let's dive into our second extract from an upcoming interview with Delano Montgomery, who plays Jake, an arrogant teen who Toller meets at a youth meeting at Abundant Life. So let's hear what he had to say, and if you don't want the ending of First Reform spoiled, go away, watch the film, and then come on back. When did you sort of first hear about First Reformed? When did it become to your attention?
I had first gotten the audition, and I had saw, well, so I just have to go back a little bit, because when I was in my senior year of college, they had I had this teacher, Phil Carlson, who was our sort of business of acting teacher, and he was Phil, if you ever hear this, I love you. But he had us do this exercise where we were sort of to map out this fantasy version of our 5 years out of school. It was like, what are you going to do in your first 5 years? And it was mostly, so we'd make this list and he would tell us, like, wrong, you do this, But one of the things that we had to write down, like a list of, people that would be dreams to work with. It's like, what is your dream 5 directors that you'd, love to work on anything with? And Paul Schrader I wrote him down as my number 2. It was like, I wish I could find that list, but I remember he's always been on that list. And so when I got this audition, it just, the absurdity of it just kind of sank in first. It was like, oh my God, I'm auditioning for a Paul Schrader film in this first 5 years. And this one, it just felt, I could tell that it felt different. When I read the script, I knew that this was just a very important film. And it all started to sink in very quickly that it was like, wow, this is, it's a small role. There's no small roles, but it's like, it's a quick scene, but I think it is. I started to realize that it was very important, and I just fell in love with the script. I read it, I pored over it, and read it multiple times. So going in, I was really actually very nervous. I get nervous before most auditions, if not all, and I think that if I'm not nervous before an audition, something's wrong. It's like, if I'm walking in the room and I don't care, I guess it's like, I shouldn't even, be going out for that. But it just had this different weight to it than other auditions. And, I did the first round of auditions, and then I got a call back, and then that was like, okay, it's exciting, but I've been doing this for a while, and then I understand it's like, can never really get your hopes up too soon. But when I got the call from Emily Fleischer at Shopmaker Casting, and she called me and told me that I got the role, I remember that I was walking to the train to go to my bartending job, and I just like broke down crying. It was like, oh my God, I cannot believe that that I'm gonna work with Paul Schrader and Ethan Hawke, and it was like all sort of sinking in, like, whoa, this is, it was the first bit of like, I have it like, this is the first, real feature film that I was going to be in, and it just, it was very overwhelming to know that. But this, I guess, yes, it first appeared to me as, just an audition that, it was just different. It's just different. It just felt different from the beginning.
You touched on it a little bit earlier on, but what did you make of this part of Jake? And with that audition process, how did you sort of get into that mindset? Because I suppose
Right.
people maybe kind of associate Jake with that's the sort of things that we've heard kind of post 9/11.
Well, it's interesting. It's like Jake, with any role, like, you have to approach it without ego or judgment. Like, you have to be an advocate for them. Otherwise, it reads as false. It starts to, it just, it becomes parasitic, and you won't believe yourself, and no one will believe you, and so it is difficult for me. I mean, I certainly don't share the same, perspective that he does at all. So a lot of it, like, I guess for my thinking with Jake was that I wanted to, first of all, I needed to find a way in that felt, I needed to find like a strong rock that I could anchor myself to that was Jake. And for me, I think that I found that in this idea of, but just really in creating this backstory that, Paul hadn't, he wrote the dialogue, and I was thinking that Jake was this kid who had, it became a lot about this made up father. So and believing, sort of just, I imagined him as a person who was struggling, as you do at that age, to find his identity and to cling on to these things, and to where do you fit in socially, and how do you fit in. And you can tell that Jake is obviously he's the outcast of the group. He's someone who feels separate and feels antagonized and feels small, and he uses his small feeling to he amplifies himself in order to, which I can relate to. I think that I've done that before, and I think that that feeling of puniness is sort of what leads to a lot of this anger and this separation. But it's a difficult. I mean, I think we need to give voices to these people, whether we believe, what their politics are or not. And it's, but it is, it can be a bit of a, it's a battle with, like, the ego. It's like, well, I don't want people to think that I'm some sort of, racist or like the Trump's America kind of person. It's like, of course, no one, they all know I'm acting. It's like, it's still hard. There's always kind of these thoughts that I think creep in that are like, oh, how am I being perceived? And so for me, it was really all about, just trying to find this, this young man as like, just like, what are these like basic human, rocks I can grab onto? Not that he's like a monster, but it's like, he's obviously troubled. And, I think for me, that's where it started. It's like, where are these things I can really anchor myself to?
What was your first day on set like, when you, as you say, this is the moment you kind of, that 5-year plan, Paul Schrader's there, Ethan Hawke. What was your kind of first day like, from costume to getting kind of set up for the day?
So it was actually, it's very funny. Funny now. I'm glad that I can laugh at it. But I woke up, quite early to get to set, and I had just one of the worst, like, the first day that like a really terrible cold hits you, just where like head thumping, body aching, and I was like, oh my god, today of all days, I'm just dreadfully sick. So I woke up, my girlfriend at the time was like, oh my god, I don't know, should I be going to like a city MD, or should I be going to set? Like, what should I do? So I called production. I told them what was happening. They said, hey, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. Go just, come in and, don't shake too many hands, and, just be, So, I took some, cold medication, and I showed up, and I said, just like kind of the ride there on the subway to this bus that was meeting me was just like, oh my God, I cannot believe that the day has come and I'm, ill. So I got to set, and everyone is so great on. You can tell that Paul must work with the same people quite often, because everyone has this like amazing rapport together. Everything is just really it just was really great, efficient set. And I got into hair and makeup. I started to feel better. They put us in this little room where I was able to do some like stretching out and vocal exercises and getting prepped and starting to drop into a more focused space. And then sure enough, it was actually really interesting. I think it must have been somewhat a mix of adrenaline and maybe this is like a Dayquil, but I just started to feel like better than I've ever felt. It was like, wow, I like all the nightmare that could have been was just like fading away, and then I was there, and it was all quite quick, really. I mean, with the way we shot, it was it was very efficient. I met Ethan, we sat down, we rehearsed the scene, and we started shooting. We started taking the close-ups, and it was I was doing this thing where we were sitting in the circle, and I had been given this water bottle as a prop, like a bottled water, and I figured that Jake would be somewhat destructive with it. So I started peeling the paper off of it as kind of a way into like a physical activity of sorts, just something to kind of ground Jake in this circle. And Paul, from across the room, he goes, Delano? And I don't know, I mean, it was like a knee-jerk thing. This has been my whole life. Is it Delano? Is it Delano? And I just go, oh, actually, it's Delano. And I remember just a few people on set just started laughing, like, oh my God, this kid is like, I don't know, correcting Paul Schrader. But so then people started coming up to me going, oh, hello, Delano, and like making it kind of a thing. But yeah, he had wanted me to continue doing what I was doing with the water bottle. It was like it had turned into, I guess he wanted me to keep it. I mean, it's interesting when you watch the movie. It's like you can see it in my hand for a second, but it's not really a part of the scene at all, I think. But it was, it was just it was a treat. And Ethan is such a giving scene partner. When we ran it, the first couple times, he was always just so like, he's just very, he's just a very good and easy actor to work with, where he's just very communicative, very giving, very, he was definitely, a wonder to act with. I mean, it's funny, the scene, ends right there, and there was a few takes where we just started improvising afterwards, where the scene ends, and Ethan would go, what's your name again? It's Jake. We'd keep going and talk, beyond the script on this subject. It was great. It was great fun that Paul was letting that happen on set as well.
That must be amazing to go sort of toe-to-toe improvising with Ethan Hawke. You must be hoping like, oh, I wish there was some deleted scenes out there somewhere. Why is that not on some iTunes extra?
Right. Well, it was funny because after the first time we ran the scene, and I wasn't, I was obviously feeling a bit under the weather, but I wasn't particularly like, I didn't have like the like starstruck kind of like, oh my God, it's Ethan Hawke. Like, I mean, it was like, yep, that's definitely Ethan Hawke, and we're gonna do this scene. And the first couple times we ran it, I think it was after the second time, he looked over me. He said, "Hey man, don't be afraid to jump down my throat. Don't be afraid to interject." And I think it was just being in that kind of like, we'd already been bickering, essentially. So we had this like thing, we were kind of being like playfully combative with each other, and I don't know where I got the like. I mean, like thinking back, it's like, wow, why did I say that to him? He said like, "Hey man, don't worry about like interrupting me." I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm not worried about interrupting you. like, let's go, you know. And it was kind of this like moments like, oh my God, what am I, like, I'm really just, I need to chill out. But, yeah, it was really fun. I mean, looking back, of course, it's like, I'm sure he probably appreciated that we were just, you know, having that energy back and forth. But at the time, I thought, like, oh my God, does Ethan Hawke, like, hate me? Like, does he think I'm, like, this arrogant kid? It's like, you know, go back to scooping ice cream or something, you know? So, I don't know. It's like, I'm sure he didn't think that way, but it was kind of, at the time, yeah, a bit spicy.
I think in like his next scene after that, like he says, I had this young arrogant guy just jumping down my throat afterwards. Now I don't know if he's talking about you or Jake. It's just hard to know now.
Yeah. Well, what he doesn't know is that I used to, one of my first jobs out of school was scooping ice cream. Like, you know, it's like, oh, the many jobs I've had, you know. And it was actually in the neighborhood that Ethan Hawke lives in. And well, you know, he would come into the ice cream store, and I'd you know, I'd get him at his kids' ice cream and stuff. So it's kind of this funny thing. I never brought it up on set, of course, because I don't think people really want to know that they're acting with the guy that was serving them ice cream. Not that he wouldn't understand, you know, but it's kind of a funny connection that he doesn't know about unless he listens to this.
That's awesome. How did you find sort of like, obviously Paul Schrader was one of your dreams to kind of work with. What was he like as a director on that day, and what did he sort of tell you about Jake?
Well, you know, he and I really spoke briefly. When you're on camera, he is creating so many aspects of each shot. You know, he's really meticulous. So he's focusing on so many different things, and I feel like he kind of, I think he, through the audition process and wanting to work with me for this character, I think that he had given me sort of I think he trusted, like, that I had the right idea for this scene, that it was, he didn't really need to give me too much, you know, direction as far as, like, what the perspective was. So really, like, I mean, our interaction was, other than being in an elevator with him and talking about, you know, Delano being a somewhat presidential name, and he sort of, you know, sorry that he called me Delano, but it was like, you know, whatever, I don't care, I'm used to it. But you know, our other than that, our actual, you know, interaction was mostly just that we would do it multiple times, and each time I would try and give him something slightly different, where it was like sometimes more disappointed. I think Jake is disappointed. I think he feels let down that these people aren't standing up for this notion that, you know, like, you know, that he thinks that they're like somehow shitting on America. Sorry, excuse my language, but you know, I think even Ethan Hawke says that in the next scene, and like Reverend Toller says, you know, this kid thinks I'm shitting on the American flag, and I think he is disappointed. He feels let down that that we're all somewhat defeatist, or that Toller is not standing up for this, like, this notion that, like, you know, faith and wealth are correlated somehow. And I think that Jake is also representative of a certain demographic that is struggling financially, and I think that he wants to believe that being a good Christian and having faith should equate to some sort of wealth, in the same way that, like, you know, that can be used in a lot of different ways to think about what's happening right now in this country with people of that age. And it's I mean, I have so much faith in the youth, you know, in Gen Z and these people that are, you know, going to be inheriting this planet, and I'm so terrified of what could potentially happen. And I think that there's this, you know, he is a young man who is so disappointed, and that's another way in which I relate to him. But of course, he, you know, is disappointed about other things.
How do you look back on your sort of experience on set working with kind of Schrader and Hawke and playing this kind of role? What's your kind of abiding memory and takeaway from it?
I think that the things that, I mean, other than just the immense amount of pride I have for being in a film like when I saw it at New York Film Festival, and I remember thinking like, wow, this is a really important film, and that's really it's just to be a piece of the puzzle that moves this forward, that moves this story along. It just gives me a great sense of pride, and I'm just so blown away by Ethan's performance in the whole film, and Paul. It feels like it's this culmination of like an entire career that this film came out of, and he speaks about wanting to going into making First Reformed as wanting to make a spiritual film, and for me, that's what this movie really is. It transcends all of the separation and all the little, pieces that lead up to this moment, that last shot, and it brings us all together in this. It brings us all together in this embrace, and I think for me, I mean, obviously, I have these memories of like, oh my God, I was so ill, and I kind of all the things that of course no one else thinks about or is caring. It's like have all these little moments of like, oh God, do I look sick on camera? It's like none of that matters, because at the end of the day, that film for me, it's something that I'm just very proud to have been a small part in a film that I think is one of the most important movies that's come out in recent history. Yeah, so it's sort of this bizarre feeling where it's like I don't really think of it as like, oh, it's like, I don't know, when I think of First Reformed, I don't really even think about being in it. Like I'm more just like a fan of what happened. I'm in awe of like the actual the film itself. I think it's just I think it's a masterpiece, and so my like, yeah, I guess my perspective it's somewhat bizarre. It's like it feels like a dream. Like, oh, I was in it. Oh yeah, of course. Like, but wow, like I don't know. I just marvel at everything else that occurred. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So what was it like? When did you talked about seeing it sort of for the first time at sort of the New York Film Festival? Then what was it like when you sort of see the trailer for the first time, and then what's it like going in to see that film going, I'm going to be in this Paul Schrader film, I hope I've made the cuts, or did you always know you were still going to be in it? What's it like waiting to hopefully see yourself? Do you get caught up in the film, or do you get caught up in like, oh my God, what am I going to be like?
Right, yeah, well, yeah, of course. I mean, look, I don't I don't like to watch myself act. And it's always kind of this cringy thing where it's like, oh, like the scene is coming up, like my heart starts racing, like, oh God, like what's it, I definitely I have that, yeah, it's sort of like it's not that I watch it and I try and pick out all the like shit, like, oh my God, my acting teacher would be like, oh, relax your eyebrows, whatever. I'm not like going through like that, but I think that there is kind of always this this feeling of like, yeah, did I do okay? It's now been immortalized, and it's like, it's stuck in there. So it's there is sort of that. But honestly, I didn't really. I was just excited to see the film, and I was so curious. I was very curious, and I was very excited, of course, but just very curious. I think that I wondered how he was going to tackle some of these scenes. Like reading the script, it was like there's so many interesting problems to tackle, and I think that it was just like the way that it came alive. It just all like sat in, and yeah, I guess like when you say like when like the trailers came out and stuff, it was like, okay, cool, like here's the trailer for it. I don't know. I guess I didn't really have like that much of a like leading up to it like suspense. It was more like, oh man, yeah, like the little things, like, am I gonna look sick?
When you kind of came away from that film, and then it becomes one of these films that people talk about it. It's polarizing. There's people have torn debates about certain things. It's had this huge impact. It's gone on to be nominated for an Oscar as well. What was that kind of like to have been in part of something where people are talking about it? Here we are, a few years on from it, still talking about it.
Yeah, well, and I think that it's that's also just it's that's why it is such an effective film. I think it leaves people wondering. He doesn't give you what makes Paul such a brilliant writer is that he doesn't spoon feed you the answers. He's handing you the questions that we need to be asking ourselves and should have been, a lot longer ago. And I think it will continue to be an incredibly relevant film. Part of why it's like so effective is that it's just maybe the most. It is at its core a story about humanity and faith, and when he was able to create such a deep personal story. I think it was a really personal story for him as well, for Paul, and I think that also translates. It was very personal for me, of course, but I think a lot of people feel really personal about this movie. A lot of people that I know that have seen it felt like there was this, like looking through this keyhole, and you feel kind of like almost wrong for seeing it. Like you want to. These characters are putting words to so many of our thoughts and our fears. And I think that if you're not greatly affected, either inspired or just destroyed by this movie, then you're not thinking about it enough. And it's, I think, it's a very challenging movie. I think it's really challenging to think about these things. And I'm more like, I totally understand where Philip Ettinger's character is coming from in that scene where they're talking about climate change. And I think that, it's like there's so many opportunities, there's so many of these arguments in this movie on both sides, and I think that it really gives it's divisive. It makes people feel personally like involved in this fight, because how can you not? And it's an interesting thing. I think that, again, my relationship to the movie is like, I feel like very much like I did my job, and I'm obviously proud to be a part of this number. But it's like, for me, the movie is just so much bigger than like kind of my personal like cool, I'm in it, but it's so much bigger than that. So that's kind of what I've taken from it, years later. I think that for me, it's really just about the questions in that movie. I think that we're all still, and a lot of my friends and I still discuss the movie and like quite often. It's never an easy conversation, but it's something that we really have to be thinking about. So I guess that's sort of where it is for me. It's it's less about me. My thinking about it, I don't want to separate from myself. Like it's not that I'm like trying to like exclude myself, or like I guess I do have like a little bit of like imposter syndrome where I'm like, oh, do I really deserve to be here? And I think I do. It's just that it's not about me. I think that I'm just very proud to have been a part of a film that is so important.
In the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb.
You will get the full interview in a few months' time for that one as well. So the ending. So the film takes a turn, and in the final act, he goes down the route of being a potential suicide bomber. So what did you make of this route for the character? Paul Schrader claimed he wrote two alternate endings, one in which the pastor Toller blows up the church, and one in which he drinks the drain cleaner, but finally decided on the ending he filmed. Dallas, what was your take on this kind of suicide bomber kind of twist?
I think it was the logical progression from where Toller's mindset was going, knowing that he was potentially going to... It sounded like he was going to lose the church after the reconsecration ceremony. He was going to be forced to step down and go into rehab and stuff like that. And he clearly felt that this company was doing enough damage to the planet that he needed to make a statement. So I could understand that, considering, he thinks he's got stomach cancer, he's going to die anyway, he might as well go out as a martyr of some respects. And so I could see that going. Of course, then when Amanda Seyfried's character turns up and he has to change tack, he then sort of goes through the sort of self-mutilation, self-flagellation thing with the barbed wire, and then is about to drink the Drano, but then she comes in. And then again, I'm wondering, is it open to interpretation as to does what next actually happen, or does he have a break from reality at that point? I'm not entirely sure. I'd be interested to see what you guys think of that.
What did you think, Tristan, then? The ending, were you completely lost by the Magical Mystery Tour, and did the ending kind of pull it back for you, or was this sort of another misfire as well, and did you maybe wish they'd gone with the alternative ending?
When I heard about the alternative ending where he actually drinks it and kills himself, I would have much preferred that one. I would have much not the suicide bomber, like not him going off. I actually didn't hear that. I didn't know that he actually wrote that ending. I thought he just wrote the ending where he drank and then killed himself. I feel like we were definitely going to that end. Like we were, like Dallas was saying, like we were driving that way, and it was a natural conclusion of his character. I don't think it was a natural conclusion of his character to actually, like kill innocents. And so that's what really took me off guard, because I feel like he could, like if he wanted to kill himself because of the stomach cancer, and if he wanted to make a statement, he could have drank that in front of everyone while he was making that statement, show the barbed wire if he wanted to, something like that. So the idea that it was a suicide bomber really, really threw me. But the ending that we got with more levitation, I feel like I would have enjoyed it more and maybe even understood it a little bit more if we didn't have the Magical Mystery Tour. And so I did not enjoy this ending as it was because of the David Lynch green screen scene. But if we didn't have that green screen thing, I think I would have been able to swallow it a little bit better. But I still don't like that they had them kiss at the end, because I'm just like, were we going towards that? Was there some sort of romantic feeling to them? And I know, I get it. I get the whole Ordette comparisons. I understand that. I get that Paul Schrader saw Ordette. He liked Ordette. We've all seen Ordette. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. And I feel like if they wanted to go with this ending, they should have cut the first levitation scene. But I would have, regardless, I would have much preferred if he drank it and made a statement. I feel like that would have been much more powerful.
What about for yourself, Dallas?
I'm thinking maybe a combination of the two, where maybe he drank the drain cleaner and then he had like a Romeo and Juliet thing where she comes in and then he realizes his mistake, but it's too late, and they have like this silent sort of look between the two of them, and then maybe ended it there. I mean, clearly he maybe sees her as some sort of potential salvation for himself, hence the kiss. Because I wondered in my head if maybe like the kiss was just in his mind, maybe that was his thing. It's not entirely clear one way or the other, but I would have potentially, now we're sort of discussing it here, I think a combination of him drinking the drain cleaner and still dying but still having this look between the two of them, that might have worked. But hey, that's not the ending we're going to get. unless we remake the film ourselves.
Dallas, I completely and utterly agree with you. Like, I like that she came in. I like that he changed his mind because he saw her. I like that they had a moment together. I just didn't like that they kissed, and I would have preferred not to have the levitation. So, like, having a Romeo and Juliet moment, man, that would have been mind-blowing.
So any kind of final thoughts on this film? What's kind of special about it, and are there any little moments that you'd like to kind of give a shout out to? Dallas.
Well, obviously I'm a fan of this movie because I spent a long time trying to get the hat off of the A24 shop. So, I'm supporting the little guy, one size fits all. But, I think the greatest travesty about this film is the fact that Ethan Hawke was not nominated for Best Actor that year. I know he's someone who never sort of actively goes out of his way to campaign for awards and play the game, but I think he was really deserving. This is some of his finest work, and yeah, I think it's definitely up there although certain parts of the final third maybe don't land as they should, it's still up there as one of the sort of top tier A24 films for me.
What about for yourself, Tristan? Any final thoughts?
I think I echo every single word that Dallas just said. I feel like it's definitely up there for A24 films. I think even though I didn't have as many issues with Lady Bird as I did with First Reformed, I think it's one of those films where even though it pissed me off so bad, I still love it. I still think it's great. I still think it's well made and well executed, except for those two things. Honestly, if you just excise that, you could have a near perfect movie, and that's so rare these days. It's so utterly rare, and I think the screenplay is one of the best things about it, along with Ethan Hawke's performance. And I am going to try to get one of those A24 hardbound screenplays of First Reformed. There's hopefully when it's on sale, when it's not like $50. But I feel like I have a handful of movies that have disappointed me, but I rewatch constantly. And you guys might make fun of me, but like Watchmen and Alexander, like Watchmen by Snyder and Alexander by Stone, for some reason, I'm fascinated by them, even though I don't really enjoy them that much. Even though I do enjoy First Reform, it disappointed me so greatly, but it kind of burrowed into my brain and into my heart. And I'm definitely going to be rewatching this in the future.
I can completely agree with you on Watchmen, I have to say. I think the Hallelujah Leonard Cohen sex scene aside, I think it's a really sort of interesting take on it, and I actually think that the Watchmen film has a better ending than the Watchmen graphic novel in the way that they tie Dr. Manhattan into it. But I'm just thinking now that in terms of Taxi Driver remakes, I think this one is better than Joker, although I now have in my head, I've created a scene where Ethan Hawke is sort of dancing around the church to Rock and Roll Part 2 by Gary Glitter, and I think it would make for an even better film if he'd done that.
So we go from I think we can safely say all three of us are fans to one degree or another of First Reformed, to How to Talk to Girls at Parties. So in the 1970s, punk-loving teen Ian attempts to crash a party in the London suburbs, but he ends up at the wrong house, where he encounters a kooky conformist cult, which includes the naive Zan. They hit it off before N learns that she is actually a repressed humanoid alien on Earth to complete a fatal ritual. N appeals to the punk scene to help both emotionally and physically liberate the lady he's fallen for. So Tristan, this was a first time watch for you. You were compelled to watch it because you got to talk about First Reformed. What was your expectations going into this film, and what was your reactions?
When you asked me to come on to talk about First Reform, it was a long time ago. It was basically like after I saw the movie, you said like, oh, you need to come on A24 and talk about it. I said, absolutely 100%. I want to do that. And so you penciled me in. And then at the last moment, you're like, oh, by the way, you need to watch this other film. And so I immediately go and watch the trailer, and I curse your name to the heavens because I knew that this was going to be a garbage film. And I was just like, why? why is he making me do this? Is there any way I can get out of this? Is there any way I can just talk for the first half and then bail, or like come up with some sort of medical excuse, or can I get a doctor's note? Like what can I do to get out of this? And I was lamenting it so much. I literally watched it this morning before I went to work. Like that's and that's how long I waited to watch it, because I kept putting it off and putting it off. And I went into it knowing it was going to be garbage, and I have a surprise for you guys on how I felt about it once we get to that point.
So Dallas, what was your first kind of experience with How to Talk to Girls at Parties?
It was watching it about 2 days ago. It's one I'd been sort of putting off. I sort of was looking for it on sort of streaming services, and then I got a copy from the library, but for some reason that wasn't working on my DVD player, and then it popped up on all four, so I was able to watch it. I didn't really know much about it at all. I know it had been at the Glasgow Film Festival a few years ago. I know Neil Gaiman's like huge at the moment with like the Good Omens adaptation on Amazon Prime and stuff like that, but I didn't even watch a trailer for it before I watched it. I was just really feeling a bit nonplussed about it, and yeah, we'll go on to what we thought in a second. What about yourself?
As the only one to have seen this at the cinema, I kind of caught the trailer and I thought, I'm kind of interested in this sort of a British sci-fi. Neil Gaiman, interesting. Elle Fanning, I think she's a fantastic actress on her day. I was kind of really keen to go into it. And then I watched the film at the cinema and I really just didn't enjoy it at all. I find punk rock movies quite insufferable at the best of times, and this was definitely the case with this film. So I'm going to throw it out to you guys. I'm aware with Tristan we've got a ticking clock, so you can't leave us on a cliffhanger before you've got to go. What was your kind of reaction to the film? Was it as expected, or was it a pleasant surprise?
This movie solidified for me that I'm not going to force myself to watch any more movies just for podcasting. I was so disgusted by this film. I almost everything about it. Just the pacing, the weird strobe effect that they did when they were having fun. It made me feel like my computer was buffering. The color palette, like just the did I mention the cinematography, the editing, the acting, the story, the vulgarity, the grossness, the rape, the mind-numbing. God, oh my gosh, I hated this movie, and I now miss the person I was before I saw this movie, and I just can't handle it. I think this is the first non-riff track movie I've seen where I gave it a half star, like the lowest that I could possibly go. Like this was lower than not High Rise, but a High Life for me.
So Dallas, did you give it a lowly half star, or did it earn a bit more kind of a bit of higher praise from you?
I think I only ever sort of do full numbers. I don't give up, so it would get the minimum sort of 1 star. But I have to say that when I watch these films, and there's a lot of films that we should watch that I've never watched before, and I'll always try and find positives from the film to talk about on the podcast. I really, really struggled with this one, I have to say. I actually found myself, even within like the first 5 minutes, I'd written down on my notes, I am actively hating this film. And I don't normally say that I hate a film, but I was really not enjoying this one at all. And I think Kristen said he thought his thing was buffering. I thought there was a problem with my TV and the frame rate or something. I thought it had stuck because for some reason in the opening sequence, they're running along with the cycle and then it sort of pauses, but the music and stuff keep going. I thought there was a problem with my TV, and I was just like, but that's just the style of filmmaking they're going for. And yeah, no, was not a fan of this at all. You've got talent in there like Nicole Kidman, Ruth Wilson, and Elle Fanning, and it is all just utterly wasted on this thing. I read that it was based on a short story, but the short story basically ends after they leave the house and they realise they've been at the wrong party. That's it. They've then taken that and added on an extra hour about this alien civilization, which is doing God knows what, because I watched the film and I'm still not even sure what they were doing. And it's like, at some point they're like fingering people, and then that causes them to clone themselves, and I'm like, what on earth is this going on? I mean, I've seen like films like Society, which is like a great sort of body horror, but it's got a lot of wit and humor about it, about the sort of 99% and the 1% or something. This has potential for something like that, but just doesn't deliver on any aspect whatsoever. And I think the three sort of central boys playing the kids who are into the punk scene were just awful across the board as well. So yeah, not a fan of this one.
I will put it this way: even though I'd seen the film and it was terrible, I actually won a DVD copy of this film, and I've basically kept it in a drawer in the cellophane wrap until I could watch it again for this project. And it is now, I can assure you, I will rewatch the film at the weekend. It is now in a charity shop, it's ready to inflict more damage onto someone else. So, Tristan, I'm aware we've only just got like a minute left of your time. If people wanted to kind of, you've touched on it, that you're never going to watch another bad movie for a podcast again. You are someone that is kind of in a, you've just recently finished a fantastic podcast, Punch It, but you're kind of a present, out there on the internet. Where can kind of people reach out to you, maybe listen to some of your own thoughts, or maybe hear you talk about films that you also love instead of hate?
Yeah, you can find me online. My username online on pretty much different services is the Insane Robin. The best place to get a hold of me is on Twitter, and there I kind of riff about like what I like and what I watch. I'm on Letterboxd. I've been trying to use that more and more. Same username. I have 2 shows that have just recently ended. It's Punch It, Writing in Star Trek, and a show that I've done with my wife called Nerd Nuptial. If you want to hear more about films, go to Nerd Nuptial. It's still there, even though we're not going back to it. It's still there. It's still archived, and so you can peruse at your leisure. And upcoming projects, I have no idea. You actually, we're recording this on the day that Punch It released its final episode, so the future is a little weird for me right now, because right now, for the first time in 8 years, I don't have a currently running show, so the future is open and bright and unknown.
You're very lucky, Tristan, because I actually had more questions to ask you about how to talk to girls at parties. So, you having this room booked for only an hour has kind of given you a nice early exit. So I won't be able to cross-examine you and probe your thoughts on this film. So thank you so much for coming on today. And me and Dallas will return in 2 weeks to talk about Hereditary and Woman Walks Ahead. Thanks for listening. Bye.